This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real-life emotions and everyday experiences.
Chapter 1. The Gift Nobody Saw. Today is my birthday. James gave me a really pretty bracelet. People on social media were liking the picture non-stop. I smiled and thanked him, then went into the bathroom, sat down on the cold tile floor, and cried. It's not like I was sad, but I wasn't really happy either. The tears just came out on their own, like someone had turned on a faucet inside me without me even knowing. I sat there, hugging my knees, staring up at the white ceiling. Outside, James was cleaning up the dishes from the party. I could hear the clinking of plates, the water running, him whistling without a care in the world. 3 hours ago, our apartment was packed with people. James had been planning this for a whole month. He invited all my friends, my co-workers, both our parents. Annie, my best friend, hugged me and squealed, "Oh my God, your husband is so thoughtful. Look, he even decorated with heart balloons." My mum was all smiles, pulling me aside to whisper, "See? I told you. You married a good man. You're set for life." James stood in the corner of the room, holding the birthday cake in one hand and his phone in the other. Recording the moment, I blew out the candles. He smiled his gentle smile, his eyes crinkling a little behind his black-framed glasses. Everyone clapped. I leaned down to blow, the flame flickered and went out, a wisp of smoke rising up. What did I wish for? I suddenly thought. But I didn't have time to wish for anything because everyone was already cheering. When people were leaving, everyone hugged me and told me I was the luckiest girl on earth. I nodded and smiled, thanking each person. James stood next to me, his arm warm around my waist. I leaned my head against his shoulder for a second, smelling his familiar cologne. Then the door finally closed. James let go of my waist, walked straight to the dinner table and started cleaning up. He reached for a trash bag and called out, "Today was so fun, wasn't it, honey? Wait for me to finish cleaning up and we can watch a movie, okay?" I stood there, leaning against the wall, watching him. His shadow stretched long under the warm yellow light. I wanted to say, "Honey, come here for a second." But my throat felt tight. I just mumbled, "Okay." Then I went into the bathroom. The tears dried on my cheeks. I stood up, washed my face, and looked in the mirror. My eyes were a little red, but not too bad. I tucked a few stray hairs behind my ear, took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked out. James was already in bed. He was hugging his pillow, eyes closed, breathing slowly and evenly. The TV was still on, some movie halfway through. On the table, the pile of birthday gifts sat there, the bracelet I had taken off lying alone next to them. I stood there looking at him. It's been 2 years, hasn't it? Our wedding night was just like this. He held me, whispered in my ear, "I love you. We're going to have a wonderful life." My heart was pounding. I wrapped my arms tight around him, waiting. Then his breathing slowed down, his arm loosened from my waist. I lay still, eyes wide open, staring at the dark ceiling. I thought, he must be tired. It's your wedding day. Everyone's tired. 2 years. More than 700 days. That scene repeated itself so many times I knew every detail. James would initiate once or twice a month. He'd kiss my forehead, then the rest would happen quickly, silently. When it was over, he'd turn over, pull the blanket up to his neck, and fall asleep. Like a machine. I'd lie next to him, eyes open, hand on my chest, feeling my heartbeat slowly go back to normal. I used to think, is it me? Am I not attractive enough? Did I do something wrong? I tried wearing nicer lingerie. He didn't notice. I tried being more forward. He'd say, "I'm too tired, honey, tomorrow." I tried talking about it directly. He'd look at me with this confused expression. "We're fine, aren't we? I love you. What are you thinking about?" I don't even know what I'm thinking anymore. Once I went to my mum's house, sat in the kitchen and helped her pick vegetables. I quietly asked, "Mum, when you and Dad, how was it for you?" My mum glanced at me, her hands still moving quickly. "When? You're married now. As long as you love each other, that's what matters. That's just how men are. You're lucky to have a gentle husband who works hard for his family. Don't ask for too much. Sometimes we women have to be understanding and compromise." I was quiet, picking each vegetable, putting it in the basket. I almost cried right there into the greens, but I blinked it back and swallowed it down. My mum loves me, I know, but some things I just can't tell her. Some loneliness even a mum can't understand. I started keeping a journal. Not writing, but drawing. Every time I felt rejected, every time James fell asleep with his back to me, every time I had to choke back tears, I'd take a pencil and draw a little crack on a blank page. A jagged line like lightning, like a crack in the wall. The notebook slowly filled with cracks. I'd flip through it, looking at them, wondering, how many more cracks until I break? On my birthday night, I stood watching James sleep. His soft, even breathing. His face looked so peaceful, so carefree when he slept. I reached over and turned off the TV. The room went dark, with only the dim light from the living room sneaking in. I looked down at my wrist. The bracelet James gave me was really pretty. The stones sparkled in the dim light. I touched it, feeling the cold from the tiny stones against my skin. Ice cold. I took it off, put it on the table, next to my phone, next to my keys, next to the notebook full of cracks. I lay down in bed, pulled the blanket up to my chest. I turned on my side, facing James. His broad back rose and fell gently with each breath. I reached out my hand, almost touched his back, then pulled it back. I lay on my back, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Like my wedding night, like so many other nights. But tonight I didn't ask myself, is it me anymore? I just lay there listening to my husband's steady breathing, feeling the painful silence in my chest. The room was pitch black, but I could see everything perfectly. I could see the bracelet on the table. I could see the notebook full of cracks in the drawer. I could see the last 2 years, how I tried so hard to build something that it seemed only I could see. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow morning, James will wake up, pat my head, and ask me what I want for breakfast. I'll smile and say anything is fine. He'll go make coffee, I'll sit at the table, look at the bracelet, then put it on and go to work. Everything will go back to normal, like nothing ever happened. But I know something inside me is changing. Quietly, slowly, like the cracks on the page. One day, when there are enough cracks, I'll break. Or I'll get up, close the notebook, and leave. I don't know when that day will be. But tonight, I'm not crying anymore. Chapter 2. The last attempt. I decided to talk to James. Really talk this time. I picked Saturday night. I'd been preparing all week, going over and over in my head what to say, arranging it so it would be easy to understand, gentle, so he wouldn't feel attacked. I even practiced in front of the mirror, like when I used to practice for job interviews. That night, James was on the sofa watching a movie. He was holding popcorn, eyes glued to the screen, laughing every now and then. I sat down next to him and waited for the episode to end. He looked at me and held out the popcorn. Want some? I shook my head. James, can we turn off the TV for a minute? I want to talk to you. He looked confused for a second, then nodded and reached for the remote. The screen went dark, the room suddenly silent, just the hum of the air conditioner. He turned to me, still with that familiar gentle smile. What's up? I took a breath. My heart was beating faster than I expected. I looked into his eyes, trying to keep my voice calm. James, we need to talk about us, about our sex life. The smile on his face froze. It didn't exactly disappear, but it got stuck, like it was frozen mid-smile. He didn't say anything, just looked at me. His eyes blinked fast, faster than usual. I kept going, because I knew if I stopped, I wouldn't have the courage to continue. I know this isn't an easy thing to talk about, but I feel like something's not right between us. When we're intimate, it feels so mechanical. Like we're just going through the motions, then it's over and you turn over and go to sleep. I lie there and I feel like, I don't know, like I'm just a shadow or something. James sat still. His hands were on his legs, his fingers curling slightly, pressing into his pants. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the table, at the remote, anywhere but my face. It's not just about the sex, James, I said, my voice shaking a little. It's about connection. I need to be held, to be touched, to feel like you actually want to be with me. Not because it's time to do it, but because you desire me. I need to feel that. I stopped, waiting for him to say something, but he was still silent. The whole room just had the air conditioner and our breathing. I felt my heart racing, a mix of hope and fear. Hope that this time he would understand. Fear that he wouldn't. Finally, James sighed. A heavy sigh. Like I'd just asked him to carry something too heavy. He rubbed his face with his hand and said, "I'm sorry." I waited, but nothing else came. I looked at him, trying to find something more in his eyes. "What are you sorry for?" I asked quietly. James shrugged, still not looking at me. "Just sorry for making you sad. I didn't mean to." I know you didn't mean to, but I need to understand why. Why do you never initiate? Why does it always feel so rushed, like you just want to? Get it over with." He was quiet for a long time. I could see his jaw tighten a little, the muscles under his skin tensing. Then he spoke, his voice softer. I don't have the same needs as you. It's not the most important thing to me. I still love you. You know I love you, right?" He looked up at me the first time during the whole conversation. His eyes had something pleading in them, like he was begging me to confirm something. "I know," I said. "I know you love me, but..." "So you can't accept me for who I am?" He cut me off, his voice a little louder. "This is who I am. I can't pretend to be someone else. Is sex really that important? Important enough for you to sit here and talk to me like I've done something wrong?" His question landed in the silent room like a knife. I couldn't dodge it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I looked at him, saw his face turning red, saw his eyes getting a little wet. He was sad, he was hurt, and suddenly I felt terrible. Was I being selfish? Was I asking for too much? He's gentle, kind, has never raised his voice at me. He remembers my birthday, gives me gifts, cooks, does the dishes. He's a good husband in everyone's eyes. And here I am, questioning him about that. I felt my throat tighten, not from anger, but from a vague despair rising up from my stomach. I wanted to say, it's not just about sex, it's about feeling desired. It's about feeling chosen. It's about not feeling alone in my own marriage. But I couldn't put those feelings into words. They were all tangled up, a mess. I just sat there looking at James, silent. James was silent too. He reached for the remote and turned the TV back on. The screen lit up again. Some comedy was on. Fake laughter coming from the speakers. He stared at the screen, his hand going back to the popcorn, chewing steadily. I was still sitting there next to him on the same couch, just a few inches apart, but I felt so far away, like he was in another world and I was sitting in my own room, watching his life through a window. After a while, he turned to me, his voice softer now, like he wanted to make up. "Let's not fight anymore. I'm sorry, okay? Come here." He opened his arms, patting the couch next to him. A hug that would make everything go away. A hug like all the other times, so tonight we could go to sleep. Tomorrow we could wake up, and everything would go back to normal. I didn't move. I looked at his open arms, at the movie playing behind him, at the popcorn on his lap. Then I stood up. "I'm going to bed." I walked into the bedroom, closed the door. I lay down in bed, pulled up the covers, closed my eyes. From the living room, the TV murmured on. I didn't cry. My tears were dry, or maybe I'd swallowed them so many times they just didn't want to come out anymore. I just lay there, my hand on my chest, feeling my heart beat slowly. And I thought about James's question. Is sex really that important? I still didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. The loneliness I felt right then, lying alone in the bedroom while my husband watched TV in the other room, was bigger than any loneliness I'd ever felt when I was single. The next morning, James made me coffee, put it on the table, kissed my forehead lightly, before going to work. He smiled at me, gentle like always. I smiled back like always. But I knew something inside me had died after last night. Some small hope that I'd held onto for 2 years had quietly faded away. I looked at the bracelet on my wrist, then at the notebook full of cracks in the drawer. I took out my pencil and drew one more crack. Chapter 3. The blurry line. After that night, I stopped trying. Not that I made a clear decision. It just happened naturally, like a rubber band stretched too long that finally goes slack and doesn't want to snap back. I stopped initiating, stopped wearing nice lingerie, stopped lying there waiting in the dark. When James turned over and went to sleep after those few rushed times, I didn't feel hurt anymore. I just lay there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, my mind blank. Like there was a thin film covering my emotions, making everything feel distant and fuzzy. I focused on work. At the office, I took on more projects, stayed late, came home when James had already watched 2 episodes of whatever show. We ate dinner together, asked each other how our day was, then he'd sit in front of the screen, I'd clean the kitchen, shower, go to bed. A perfect loop. Then one day, I saw an ad for an evening drawing class at a community centre near my work. I used to draw back in college. Nothing special, just doodles in my notebooks, cartoonish portraits of friends. James said my drawings were cute, but he never asked why I stopped. I signed up. The class was on Tuesday nights. The room was big and bright, smelling like paint and paper mixed together. About 10 people, all different ages. But the person I noticed first was the guy sitting in the corner by the easel. Liam. He wasn't obviously handsome, not like James with his friendly, gentle smile. Liam had a sharp face, slightly tanned skin, and his eyes. His eyes were what I couldn't look away from. They were warm in a strange way. When he looked at a drawing, his gaze was soft, tender, like he was looking at someone he loved. The teacher introduced Liam as a freelance artist who sometimes came to class to help students. He smiled at everyone, not a big smile, but enough to make little wrinkles appear at the corners of his eyes. I looked down at my drawing board, suddenly feeling awkward. The first few classes, I just drew silently. My hands were shaky, my lines stiff, nothing like in college. I looked at my sketch of a vase and saw it was lifeless, clumsy like a kid's drawing. Then one night, I was busy erasing and redrawing when a voice came from behind me. "You're trying too hard." I jumped and turned around. Liam was standing there, holding a paintbrush, looking at my drawing. He smiled, not a mocking smile, but the smile of someone who just saw something clearly. "What do you mean?" I asked. He pulled up a chair and sat next to me. Close, but not too close. Close enough that I could smell a faint scent of paint on his shirt. "You're drawing with your head," he said, pointing at my sketch. "Look, every line is the right proportion. Technically correct, but there's no feeling in it. It's like you're trying to draw a perfect vase. Instead of drawing the vase you're actually looking at." I looked at my drawing, then at him. He looked at me, his eyes warm again. "Try to loosen up," he said. "Don't think about making it beautiful. Just let your hand guide you. You'll be surprised." I nodded and turned back to my board. He sat there for a while, watching me draw, then got up and went somewhere else. I don't know if my drawing was any better that day, but I realized I'd forgotten about James, forgotten about home, forgotten about all the cracks. For 2 hours, I only had my board and the pencil gliding across the paper. In the following classes, we talked more. Liam asked about the drawings I brought, about my interests, about my work. I asked him about painting, about colours, about life as a freelance artist. He told me about spending hours in front of a scene just to sketch the light, about paintings that got rejected, about the joy when someone truly understood his work. One time I brought some small sketches I'd done at home, drawings of street corners, of coffee cups, of old shoes. Liam looked at each one for a long time. Then he looked up at me, his eyes bright. "These have much more soul, especially this one." He pointed to a drawing of an empty chair by a window. I'd drawn it one Sunday afternoon when James was at the movies with friends, and I was home alone, watching sunlight filter through the blinds. "You see," Liam said, "when you draw things that are familiar to you, your feelings naturally come through. This one is lonely, but it's a beautiful kind of lonely." I looked at the drawing, then at him. He had just seen something I'd never told anyone. From that day on, I found myself looking forward to Tuesday nights. One night after class, Liam asked me to get coffee. A small place nearby, just a few tables, warm yellow lighting. We sat in the corner with 2 steaming cappuccinos. Outside, a light rain started falling, drops streaming down the window. We talked about everything. A movie he'd just seen, a book I was reading, upcoming art exhibits in the city. His voice was warm and easy to listen to, and he really listened when I talked. He didn't check his phone, didn't interrupt, didn't look impatient. His eyes stayed on mine, like what I was saying was the most important thing in the world at that moment. Then he asked, "Does your husband like to draw?" The question was gentle, but it made me freeze. I held my coffee cup, turning it slowly, watching the milk foam dissolve. "He's not really interested," I said. "James prefers watching movies." "Oh." Liam nodded, not asking more. But his eyes stayed on me, waiting. I was quiet for a long time. The rain pattered outside. I felt a sadness rising from somewhere in my stomach, creeping up my throat. "I think we're fine," I finally said. But as soon as I said it, I knew it was a lie. And Liam knew it too. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with that expression. That understanding expression. The one that made me want to cry. I looked down and took a sip of my cold coffee. Bitter. We left when the rain stopped. The streets were wet, streetlights reflecting off the pavement. Liam walked with me to the parking lot. The air was cool. I pulled my jacket tighter. Before getting in his car, he turned to look at me. "Emma." I looked up. He gently touched my hand, just the back of my hand, a light touch, very quick. But it was electric. My whole arm tingled, a warm feeling spreading from where he touched, up to my shoulder, down to my chest. "If you ever need someone to talk to," he said, his voice soft as a breath, "I'm always here." His eyes looked straight into mine. Nothing ambiguous, nothing calculated, just sincerity. A sincerity I had forgotten what it felt like to receive. I stood there frozen, unable to say anything. He smiled slightly, turned, and walked away. I watched his figure disappear into the dim streetlights. In my car, I sat for a long time, my hands still on the steering wheel. The palm of my hand was burning. I put my hand on my chest, feeling my heart pounding, fast. Faster than any time I'd been with James. And then I realized I was craving attention from another man. I was feeling alive because of a single touch. Fear hit me, cold and sharp, washing away all that warmth. I asked myself what kind of woman I was. Married, but my heart fluttered for someone else. Made promises, but a few kind words were enough to make my heart race. I drove home. The apartment lights were on. James was on the sofa, eyes on the TV. He looked up when I walked in, smiling gently. "You're back? Did you have fun?" I nodded, taking off my jacket and hanging it up. "Yeah, it was fun." I went into the bathroom and closed the door. Looked at myself in the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes unusually bright. I splashed cold water on my face, over and over, hard, like I could wash away the guilt clinging to my chest. But it wouldn't wash away. That night, lying next to James, I closed my eyes but couldn't sleep. I thought about Liam, about those eyes, about that voice, about that light touch that burned. I was scared. Scared because for the first time in 2 years, I realized I could still feel that flutter. And the scariest part was, the person making me feel it wasn't my husband. I turned over looking toward James. He was on his stomach, hugging his pillow, breathing evenly, carefree, peaceful. I envied him. I envied being able to sleep soundly without a care in the world. But I knew from tonight on I'd be awake even more. I pulled the blanket up to my neck, lying still, eyes wide open in the dark. And I asked myself, where is the line between right and wrong? Between exhaustion and betrayal? Is it as blurry as the pencil lines I draw? And if I accidentally cross it, will I even realize in time? I didn't have an answer. I only knew that tomorrow morning I'd put that cold bracelet back on my wrist, go to work, smile and talk with James, and wait for Tuesday night. And think about those eyes again. Chapter 4, The Discovery. It was a normal Thursday night. James was out having beers with co-workers. I was home alone. I sat at the computer, trying to print some work documents, but the printer kept giving me an error message. I opened the browser history to find that tutorial page I'd looked at before. And then I saw it. A long list of websites. Shortened names, keywords I couldn't even say out loud. Adult videos, all kinds. Every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. When I was at work, when I was at my art class, when I was sleeping, when I thought he was just watching Korean dramas. I sat frozen in front of the screen. My hand was still on the mouse, but it was ice cold. I felt like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice water down my back, cold running from my neck all the way down to my waist. Turns out it wasn't that he didn't have needs. He just didn't have needs for me. I stood up, pacing the room. My legs were shaking. I grabbed the chair to steady myself, breathing deep. No, I thought. Maybe it's just curiosity. All guys watch that stuff. But then I looked at the history again, at how often, at the keywords, and I knew I was lying to myself. I opened his nightstand drawer, where he kept his phone, power bank, random stuff. At the bottom, under some breath mints, I found a magazine. Wrapped in clear plastic, a woman on the cover wearing almost nothing. I flipped through it. Images I didn't want to see. I opened the bottom drawer of the dresser where he kept old clothes. My hand felt around under the sweaters and touched a paper bag. Inside were photos, printed from a computer. More of those same images. I sat down on the floor, the photos scattered around me. My mind went blank. I stared at the ceiling, watching the ceiling fan spin slowly. Around and around and around, and I felt the room getting smaller, like it was collapsing on top of me. Keys at the door. James was home. I heard his slippers shuffling, keys on the shelf, his voice calling out, "Honey, I'm home. You asleep?" I didn't answer. He walked into the bedroom and saw me on the floor, photos everywhere. His face went pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead, even though it wasn't hot out. "Emma." His voice was tiny, like a mosquito. I looked at him. That familiar face. The one I'd blamed for 2 years, wondering if I was good enough, attractive enough. The one who turned his back and slept every time I tried to open up. The one I thought loved me, just didn't know how to show it. And now I saw this. "How long?" I asked. My voice was hoarse, strange, like it wasn't mine. James stood still holding his keys. He stared at the floor. "James, I asked you how long." A few years, he whispered. "A few years," I repeated it. "A few years, meaning before we got married." He didn't answer, but silence was the answer. I stood up. My legs were numb from sitting so long, I had to hold on to the bed frame. I pointed at the photos on the floor. "So what's all this? I'm not enough for you? I don't measure up to these women?" "That's not it, Emma." James looked up, his face bright red. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Didn't mean to? You didn't mean to hide this stuff all over the house? You didn't mean to go to those sites every single day?" I didn't realize I was yelling. My throat was burning. Tears started falling, but not sad tears. Angry tears, humiliated tears. James stepped toward me, reaching out his hand. I stepped back, like he was something dirty. "Don't touch me." He froze, his arms dropped to his sides. "Emma, let me explain." "Explain what? Explain why I spent 2 years thinking it was my fault? Why I kept asking myself if I wasn't good enough? Why every time we were together you acted like it was just another chore to get through?" I was sobbing now. James looked at me, his eyes red too. He rubbed his face and let out a long, heavy sigh. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I know I have a problem. I have my own thing. It's easier, you know. No pressure, no worrying about whether I'm doing it right. I'm sorry." I looked at him. I wanted to scream. What about me? What about my feelings, my loneliness? 2 years I waited, I hoped, I blamed myself, and now you're telling me it was just easier to look at that stuff? But I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. I just stood there, shaking, looking at this man in front of me who suddenly felt like a complete stranger. James stepped closer and tried to hug me. This time I didn't move back, but my body went stiff as a board. He held me, patting my back, whispering, I'm sorry, I'll change, I promise." I stood there in his arms, eyes wide open, staring out the window. Outside, the city lights were coming on, bright windows everywhere. I felt his warm hand on my back, but my heart was ice cold. I gently pushed him away. "I'm going to bed." I went into the bathroom and locked the door. I sat down on the cold tile floor, just like on my birthday night. But this time I didn't cry. I just sat there staring at the white tiles, feeling something inside me shatter. Not cracks anymore. Shattered completely. The next morning I woke up before James. I made coffee, fixed breakfast, like every day. James came out, watching me with careful eyes. He sat at the table holding his coffee cup but not drinking. Emma, he started. I looked up at him. I smiled, a small, polite smile like the one I use with co-workers. I have an early meeting this morning. Eat your breakfast, okay? I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked to the door. James sat frozen at the table, saying nothing. Before I walked out, I looked back at him one last time. He sat there under the warm yellow light, his gentle face still holding his untouched coffee. It was a beautiful image, like those happy family photos in magazines. But I knew that beauty was just on the surface. Inside, it was hollow. I closed the door and got in the elevator. When I got to the first floor, I checked my phone. Today was Tuesday, art class night. And I knew I would see Liam. I didn't know if that was right or wrong. I didn't have the strength to think about it anymore. I just knew I couldn't go home right now. I couldn't look at James and pretend everything was okay. I needed someone to remind me that I still existed. In flesh and blood. Not just as images on a screen. Chapter 5, Breaking Point. I went to my mum's house. No warning, no explanation. I just texted James. I'm staying at mum's for a few days. Then I turned off my phone, threw my bag in the car, and drove straight across the bridge to the suburbs where my mum still lived in her little house after Dad died. My mum opened the door, saw me standing there with my bag, and sighed. That familiar sigh like she'd been expecting this all along. She reached out and touched my head, then pulled me inside. Sit down, I'll make tea. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table I'd sat at thousands of times since I was little. Old wooden table stained with tea rings. Mum brought 2 steaming cups, sat down across from me. She looked at me for a minute, then said, "Tell me," I told her. About the last 2 years. About the nights lying awake waiting. About the conversation I'd tried to have. About the cracks in my notebook. About what I found on the computer in James's dresser. Mum sat still, holding her teacup, not drinking. When I finished, she set the cup down and looked at me with that expression I'd seen 100 times. The look of experience, of acceptance, of what she thought was just the way life works. "It's just something men do," she said. "Your husband doesn't hit you, doesn't yell at you, doesn't gamble or drink. He works hard and takes care of things. A few pictures online. All men look at that stuff. Go back home." I looked at my mum. I love her. I know she loves me. But her words felt like someone cutting into my skin. "No, Mum." Mum blinked like she couldn't believe her ears. "What do you mean, no?" I took a deep breath. My hands were on the table and I could see them shaking a little. "It's not just something men do, it's betrayal. He chose them over me. For 2 years I blamed myself. I asked myself if I was good enough, pretty enough, and now I know. It wasn't me. It was him. He chose a fake world on a screen over his own wife." Mum stared at me, eyes wide. She started to say something, but I kept going. "I can't stay in a marriage where I always feel like I'm not good enough. I can't keep waking up every morning wondering what I did wrong. I'm so tired, Mum." Long silence between us. The clock on the wall ticked, ticked, ticked. Mum looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her teacup. Then she looked up at me, her eyes a little red. "Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Mum nodded slowly. She didn't say anything else, just reached across the table and took my hand. Her hand was warm, wrinkled, but steady. That night, I lay in my old childhood bedroom. Same bed from high school, the pink sheets faded now. Posters of movie stars I had loved at 15 still on the wall. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, and I thought about boundaries. There's a line that once crossed, you can never go back. Not the line of faithfulness, but the line of self-respect. I'd let it get crossed a long time ago, but I hadn't realized it. I kept thinking I could take more, try harder, sacrifice more. But at some point you look back and see you've given too much, and all that's left is an empty shell. I love James. I still love him in some way. But I realized, loving him doesn't mean I have to stop loving myself. I took out my phone. Almost 11 at night, I scrolled to Liam's name. My finger hovered over the screen. I wasn't looking for a relationship. I didn't want to cheat, even though James had betrayed me in his own way. I just needed someone to listen. Someone who would look at me and not say, "Go back home," not say, "That's just how men are." I pressed call. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then his voice, a little sleepy but still warm. "Emma, everything okay?" I paused for a second, then I said, "Can we talk? I need to talk." "I'm listening," he said without hesitation. "Go ahead." I talked. I told him everything, from beginning to end, the rejections, the failed conversations, the numbness, and finally, what I'd found. My voice was flat sometimes, choked sometimes, breaking into pieces other times. Liam didn't interrupt. He just listened quietly, occasionally saying, "Yeah," or "I understand," softly. When I finished, there was a long silence on the phone. I could hear him breathing through the speaker, steady, calm. "Emma," he finally said, "you're really brave." I let out a dry laugh, not happy at all. "Brave? I don't feel brave. I feel stupid for putting up with it so long." "No," he said. "You're brave because you're willing to face the truth. Lots of people choose to close their eyes, choose to lie to themselves. You didn't. It hurts, but you didn't run from it." I was quiet. My eyes stung. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I looked up at the ceiling. In my mind, everything suddenly became clear, not like a lightning flash, but like a sunrise slowly appearing through thick fog. "I'm going to get divorced," I said. As soon as I said it, I felt something light in my chest, so light I almost thought I might float away. But right after, the pain hit, heavy, pushing down on that lightness. I loved James. I used to dream about a future with him, and now I was saying goodbye to all those dreams. "To be honest," Liam said softly, "I'm glad you said that. Not because I want you to get divorced, but because I can see you've found your voice again." I didn't answer. I just lay there listening to him breathe through the phone, feeling a little less alone. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I will be, maybe I won't. But at least I know I'm heading in the right direction." "I believe in you," Liam said. "Whenever you need me, I'm here." We talked a few more minutes, then hung up. I put my phone on the pillow beside me and looked out the window. Outside, the moon was bright, its white-blue light filling the room. I closed my eyes. In my mind, an image of James appeared. Him on the couch, eyes glued to the screen. His back to me in bed. Him saying, "I love you" in that flat voice, like reciting lines from a script. Then that image faded, making room for something else. An empty space. A new road. Nobody had walked it yet. I didn't know where that road would lead. I only knew I couldn't stay on the old one anymore. The next morning I woke up and went to the kitchen to have breakfast with Mum. She looked at me, not asking anything else, just pushed the plate of toast toward me like when I was little. I took a bite, chewing slowly, then I said, "Mum, I'm getting divorced." Mum was holding the teapot. Her hand stopped mid-air. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she set the teapot down and nodded. "Okay, if that's your decision, do it. I'm here if you need me." I looked down and took another bite of toast. The bread was dry, but I could swallow it. I could swallow the tears threatening to spill over too. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know how James would react. I didn't know what friends and family would think. But I knew one thing. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like I was breathing. Really breathing. Not just breathing to survive, to get through the day, but breathing like someone who'd just put down a heavy weight. I picked up my phone and looked at James's name in my contacts. My finger trembled, but I pressed call. He answered after a few rings, his voice worried. "Emma, you okay? I've been so worried." "James," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "can we meet tonight to talk? Something important." Silence on the other end. Then James said, "Okay, I'll wait for you." I hung up and set the phone on the table. Outside the window, the sun was high, flooding the little kitchen with warmth. I didn't know how tonight would go, but I knew I was ready. Ready to end one thing, to begin something else. No matter how painful, how hard, I would keep going. Because I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be loved the right way. And for the first time, I really believed that. Chapter 6, Facing It. I drove back to the apartment after 3 days at my mom's. My hands on the wheel, eyes straight ahead. The sky was grey, thick clouds rolling in, promising rain. No music, no radio, just the engine and my steady breathing. In my bag, next to my wallet and phone, was a brown envelope. Divorce papers. I'd prepared them, printed them, signed them. 2 years ago, I never thought I'd do this. But now, holding them, I felt strangely relieved. James was home. I knew because his car was still in the garage. I opened the door and walked into the apartment. He was on the couch, dark circles under his eyes, stubble from days without shaving. The TV was off. He looked at me, stood up, walked over. "Emma, you're finally back. I was so worried. I called you so many times you didn't answer." I put my bag on the table and took out the brown envelope. I handed it to him. James took it, looking confused. He opened it, pulled out the papers, read them. His face slowly drained of colour, from pink to pale white to grey-green. "Emma, what is this?" His voice shook. "Divorce papers?" I said calmly. "I've already signed. Read them. If you have questions for a lawyer, ask." James stared at me, eyes wide, not believing. He shook his head over and over. No, you're joking, right? Emma, you're just angry right now. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But divorce over something so small?" I looked at him. I heard him say, "so small." Those 2 words were like another knife. But this time, I didn't bleed anymore. The wound had scabbed over, dried up, turned into a scar. "James," I said, "the last 2 years weren't small to me." He stepped forward, grabbing my hand. His hand was warm, but I didn't feel anything anymore. "Emma, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll change, I promise. I'll see a doctor. I'll stop all that stuff. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't leave me." "Sam." I pulled my hand away from his, gently but firmly. "James, you had 2 years to change. You had chances when I talked to you. When I cried, when I told you how lonely I was, you chose to stay silent. You chose other things. Now it's too late." Tears started rolling down James's cheeks. He was crying. The first time I'd ever seen him cry. Tears streaming down, falling to the floor. He dropped to his knees, hugging my legs. "Emma, I'm begging you. I love you. I can't live without you." I looked down at this man kneeling at my feet. 2 years ago, I used to wish I could see him like this. Used to wish he would hurt like I hurt, cry like I cried. But now that it was happening, I felt nothing. Not happy, not satisfied, not even sorry for him. Just tired. Deep bone-tired exhaustion. "James, get up," I said. "Don't grovel like that." He didn't get up. He just held my legs and sobbed. I left him there, walked into the bedroom and started packing. Word spread faster than I expected. James's parents showed up that same afternoon. His mum walked in, crying, running to hug her son. His dad stood in the doorway, his face like stone, looking at me with barely hidden contempt. "Emma," James's mum said, patting her son's back while looking at me. "This isn't right. James is gentle, kind. What did he do that's so terrible you want to leave him?" I stopped folding clothes and looked up at her. "Did you ask James? Did he tell you what he did?" James's dad snorted. "He told us everything. He just looked at some pictures and videos online. Every man does that sometimes. You're overreacting." I stood up. I looked him straight in the eye. "So, sir, if you think it's normal for your husband to look at naked women every single day, to satisfy himself instead of touching his wife, to treat intimacy like a chore he just wants to get over with for 2 years. If you think that's normal, then I'm sorry, but I'm not like you." James's mum froze, eyes wide. His dad's face turned red, fists clenching. "What kind of way is that to talk? You've been part of this family for so long. Where are your manners?" I smiled, a cold, flat smile. "I'm not part of this family anymore, so I don't need to mind my manners." I turned around and kept packing. That night, my phone rang constantly. My mum called. "Emma, I heard you're really getting divorced. Why didn't you tell me? The whole neighborhood is gossiping. They're saying you're spoiled, leaving your husband for no reason. I'm so embarrassed." I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the phone. The bedroom was almost empty now, most of my stuff packed. "Mom, do you know what James did?" "Yes." "He looked at some videos. That's all. He didn't hit you, didn't hurt you. You're married now. You have to learn to be patient. Your father used to." "Mom, stop." I cut her off. My voice was so cold it surprised even me. "Mom, I love you. And I know you've put up with a lot your whole life, but I don't want to live like you. I don't want to get old and look back and realize I just accepted a life full of patience and nothing else. Silence on the other end. I heard my mum sigh, then start sniffling. You're embarrassing me, Emma. I closed my eyes. A tear slipped out, but I wiped it away. I'm sorry, Mom, but I have to live my own life. I hung up. 3 days later, I finished all the paperwork with my lawyer. James agreed to sign after he realized I wasn't changing my mind. He still called, texted, begged. I didn't answer. My friends, the ones who used to tell me how lucky I was to marry James, now looked at me with pity. Some said, "You're being too reckless. You'll never find someone like him." Some said, "Men have their little flaws, it's normal." Some said nothing, just shook their heads. I stood against everyone. I was the bad person in their eyes. The unreasonable woman leaving her husband over some videos. The ungrateful daughter embarrassing her family. The impulsive friend who didn't appreciate her good fortune. But this time, I didn't back down. The last night in that apartment, I sat alone in the empty living room. James had gone to stay with his parents temporarily. I looked out the window at the sparkling city lights. Somewhere out there, millions of people were living their lives. Some happy, some sad, some in love, some slowly dying in marriages with no way out. I didn't want to be someone slowly dying. I took out my notebook full of cracks. I flipped through the pages, looking back at the last 2 years. Cracks everywhere, overlapping like a map of a broken soul. I tore out the last page, the one with no cracks yet. I drew a circle. Round, smooth, unbroken. A new beginning. Tomorrow morning, I would leave this house. I'd find a smaller apartment, just big enough for me and a few things. I'd keep going to art class. I'd let time heal the wounds. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I'd regret this. I didn't know if anyone would ever truly love me the right way. But I knew one thing. I chose myself. For the first time in my life, I put myself first. And that, even if it hurt, even if I was alone, was worth it. I turned off the light, lay down on the floor, and stared at the dark ceiling. Outside, rain started falling, pattering against the window. I closed my eyes, and I realized I was smiling. Chapter 7, Alone. The divorce was final after 2 months, faster than I expected. Papers with both our signatures, the court's red stamp, and just like that, 2 years of marriage were officially over. I held the folder in my hand, standing in the courthouse hallway, and realized it was lighter than I thought. Light as paper, but heavy as a whole chunk of my life. I moved into my new apartment, a small 1-bedroom in an older neighborhood, 20 minutes from work by subway. The place was old, creaky wood floors, tiny kitchen, but it had a little balcony just big enough for a small table and 2 chairs. I bought a little climbing rose plant and put it in the corner, promising myself I'd water it every day. First night alone. I put on new sheets, light grey cotton I'd bought at the store. New pillow, new blanket. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen, distant traffic outside, my own heartbeat. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. Lower than the old apartment, white paint faded, a small crack running from the corner to the middle of the room. I looked at that crack and thought about my notebook, about all the cracks I'd drawn over 2 years. Strangely, I didn't feel lonely. I lay there, hand on my chest, feeling my steady breathing. No one else's breath beside me. No back turned toward me. No heavy silence of someone close but impossibly far away. Just me and the quiet. I slept straight through till morning, no dreams. The days after I learned to live alone. Every morning I woke up early, made coffee, sat on the balcony watching the street. People going to work, traffic rushing by, life flowing. I drank coffee, ate toast, and felt like I was part of that flow, not standing on the sidelines watching anymore. I focused on work. At the office, I took on more projects, worked late, but not to avoid going home anymore. Because I liked my work. I was good at it. Co-workers noticed the change, some asking, "Emma, you seem different lately, so much brighter." I smiled, didn't explain. Tuesday nights, I still went to art class. Same room, same smell of paint and paper, easels lined up. But one thing was different. Liam. He was around more. Not just during class, but after. After class, he'd wait by the door, ask, "How are you today? Want to get a drink?" His voice gentle, not pushy, just an invitation for me to choose. So, we got coffee, went to small art exhibits around the city, walked along the river on weekend afternoons. He told me about paintings he was working on, his plans, trips he dreamed of taking. I told him about work, my new apartment, the rose plant on the balcony starting to bud. I knew Liam had feelings for me. Not because he said anything obvious, but the way he looked at me. That warm, gentle gaze, like I was the most precious thing in the room. The way he listened when I talked, never interrupting, never checking his phone. The way he'd lightly touch my back, guiding me through crowds at exhibits. But I wasn't ready. The wound was still there, healed on the surface but still sore underneath. I was scared to open up again, scared to trust someone, only to find myself lying in the dark again, lonely even with someone beside me. Liam didn't push. He just stayed, patient as spring sunshine, warm but not harsh. One Saturday night, Liam came to my apartment. We cooked together. Simple pasta with tomato sauce, but it was good. He brought a bottle of red wine. I set out plates in the tiny kitchen. We bumped into each other in the small space, but it felt comfortable, natural. After dinner, we sat on the balcony. The city sparkled with lights, distant traffic crossing the bridge. I poured wine into 2 small glasses, handed him one. "Thanks for tonight," I said. Liam smiled, raised his glass. "Thanks for inviting me." We sat quietly for a while, looking at the city. The night air was cool. I pulled my jacket tighter. Liam looked at me, then asked, "Emma, are you okay?" Simple question, but it hit the right spot. I looked at him, then at the city, then back at him, and I smiled. For the first time in so long, I smiled a real smile. Not forced, not fake, not polite. A smile from deep inside spreading across my face, making my eyes sting. "Yeah, I'm okay," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I'm really okay." Liam looked at me, his eyes bright. He didn't say anything, just nodded slightly, but I knew he understood. Wind blew through, rustling the rose leaves on the balcony. I looked at the tiny buds, about to bloom. "Do you remember?" Liam suddenly said. "The first time I met you in class?" I nodded. "Yeah, you said I was drawing with my head." "Yeah, and now I think you're drawing with your heart." I looked at him. He looked at me. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore, wasn't suffocating. It was a comfortable silence, like a light blanket on a cool night. Then Liam reached out. He took my hand. His hand was warm and steady. His palm was a little rough, probably from holding paintbrushes so much. His fingers gently wrapped around mine, careful, like he was afraid of breaking something. I didn't pull away. I sat there, feeling the warmth from his hand spread into mine. It traveled up my arm, to my shoulder, down to my chest, warming a part of me that had been frozen solid for 2 years. I looked down at our hands, then up into Liam's eyes. He didn't say anything, just looked at me with that expression. An expression that didn't demand, didn't push, just simply said, "I'm here, and I like you." I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I was ready for a new relationship. I didn't know if my heart was healed enough to love again. But I knew one thing: I deserved good things. I deserved someone who looked at me with tenderness, touched me with warm hands, and waited for me with patience. I deserved to be loved the right way. And this time I let myself believe that. The night wind still blew, the city still sparkled with lights, and Liam's hand still held mine. I didn't pull away. I smiled. And I felt, for the first time in so long, my heart beginning to thaw. Chapter 8. Healing. We started dating. Nothing loud or dramatic. No big declarations or romantic movie nights. Just coffee after art class like always. Quick dinners at my little apartment or his studio. Walks along the river at sunset. Everything with Liam was new. He looked at me like I was a precious painting. He remembered how I liked my coffee, that I hated cilantro, the way I laughed at funny stories. He asked how I felt before doing anything, from picking a movie to whether I wanted to hold his hand. Sometimes it was overwhelming. Overwhelming because of all that gentle attention, For 2 years, I'd gotten used to no one asking how I was, no one caring about what I needed. Now someone was putting me first, and I didn't know how to handle it. One night, we were at Liam's studio. The studio was on the rooftop of an old building with big windows looking out over the city. Paintings covered the walls, easels lined up, the smell of oil paint and turpentine in the air. Liam was showing me a painting he'd just started. A portrait of a woman with sad eyes. "Looks just like me," I joked. He laughed, looking at me. Then his face got serious. "Emma." I looked up. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers touched my skin, warm and soft. "Can I kiss you?" Simple question, but it made my heart stop for a second. I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity and a little bit of worry. He was afraid of scaring me. I nodded, not able to speak. He leaned in, his lips touching mine lightly. A tiny kiss, so gentle, like a flower petal falling on water. Then he pulled back and looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded, my eyes stinging. We kissed again, longer, deeper. And then, everything else happened naturally. We lay on the small bed in the corner of his studio under the warm yellow light. My body was tense, my heart pounding like crazy. I was scared. Scared history would repeat itself. Scared I'd be lying there again, waiting for something and then disappointed. Scared of that feeling of being left alone after it was over. Liam felt how tense I was. He stopped, lay on his side next to me, gently stroking my cheek. "Emma," he whispered, "look at me." I opened my eyes and looked at him. "We don't have to do anything fast. I'm here with you. I'm not going anywhere." I searched his eyes for any sign of impatience, any hint of disappointment, but there was nothing except gentleness and patience. I relaxed a little. He kissed my forehead, my eyes, my cheeks, my neck. Each kiss was like a reassurance. He touched me like I was the most precious thing in the world, like time didn't matter. Only my feelings mattered. And then, for the first time in my life, I understood what real intimacy was. Not an obligation, not a chore to get through, not something that left me lying awake afterward, wondering if I was good enough. It was sharing, connection, two people giving each other something beautiful. When it was over, I lay in Liam's arms, my head on his chest. His heart beat steady and slow. He stroked my hair, not saying anything. I started crying. Not from sadness, from relief. Because it turned out I wasn't the problem. It turned out I could still be loved the right way. It turned out those 2 years I wasn't wrong for wanting those things. Liam held me tighter, kissing the top of my head. "I know," he said softly. "I know." In the days after, I learned to trust happiness. But it wasn't always easy. Some nights, I'd wake up suddenly, look at Liam sleeping next to me, and this vague fear would wash over me. I was scared that one day he'd change. Scared that one day he'd look at me with empty eyes like James. Scared that one day I'd find myself alone again inside my own relationship. Once I sat on the balcony looking at the city at night, unable to sleep. Liam came out and sat next to me, draping a light blanket over my shoulders. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Are you sure you want to be with me? I have a lot of wounds. Sometimes I don't know if I can love in a healthy way." Liam looked at me. He didn't rush to answer, just took my hand. "Emma," he said, "everyone has wounds. Me too. What matters is whether we want to heal together. I do." I searched his eyes for any hesitation, but there was none. His eyes were still warm, steady, like a harbour welcoming ships after a storm. "And also," he continued, "you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be someone with no pain. I love you for who you are, even the most hurt parts of you." Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were tears of relief. One morning I woke up before Liam. Sunlight gently filtered through the curtains, painting gold streaks on the floor. Liam lay on his side, his arms still around my waist as he slept. His face in sleep was so peaceful, no worries, no defenses. I lay still watching him. I looked at every detail of his face, his thick eyebrows, his long eyelashes fluttering a little as he dreamed, his straight nose, his lips slightly curved like he was smiling at someone in his dream. I felt his steady breathing, his slow heartbeat against my back, felt his arm around my waist, warm and solid. And I realized I wasn't scared anymore. Not scared of the future, not scared of being left, not scared of old wounds opening up again. I still had scars. They'd probably always be there, reminding me of what I'd been through, but they didn't hurt anymore. They were just marks on the path I'd walked. I slowly turned to face Liam. He was still asleep, but his arm instinctively pulled me closer, like even in sleep, he wanted to keep me near. I smiled. Outside, the city was waking up. Distant traffic, birds singing on the balcony, a new day beginning. And I wasn't scared anymore. I gently kissed Liam's forehead. He stirred, opening his eyes sleepily, looking at me with that warm, just-woke-up gaze. "Good morning," he whispered. "Good morning," I answered. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tight. I buried my face in his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the warmth of his body. In that moment, I knew I had truly healed, not because I had someone perfect beside me, but because I had learned to trust myself, to trust that I deserved love, to trust that I had the right to be happy. The wound had healed, and I was ready for whatever good things were coming. Chapter 9, Lessons from the Past. I ran into James on a Saturday afternoon at the grocery store near my place. I needed a few things: milk, eggs, bread. Liam was at his studio. We were having dinner later. I was pushing my cart down the aisle, my mind wandering, thinking about a painting I wanted to start that weekend. Then I saw him. James was standing in the produce section, holding a bunch of celery, staring at it like it was some kind of complicated math problem. He was wearing an old t-shirt, faded jeans, his hair a little messy. From a distance, I could see he'd lost weight. His cheeks were hollow, dark circles under his eyes deeper than I remembered. I stopped. Part of me wanted to turn around and go a different way, but my feet wouldn't move. Then James looked up and saw me. He froze. The celery in his hand stopped midair. We looked at each other from opposite ends of the aisle between the green vegetables and the bright fluorescent lights. He nodded. I nodded back. Then he walked toward me. My heart beat a little faster, but not from nerves or fear. It was more like my heart was signaling something important is about to happen. So, "Emma," James said when he reached my cart. His voice was hoarser than before. "James?" I replied. A few seconds of silence. He looked at me, then at my cart, then back at me. He was squeezing the celery so hard I was afraid it would snap in half. You doing okay?" he finally asked. "I'm good," I said. "You?" "Yeah, okay, I guess." More silence. I waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I waited. Then James took a deep breath, still not quite looking me in the eye. "Emma, I want to apologize to you, again, but this time I want you to know I really understand." I looked at him. "I went to see a doctor," James continued, his voice getting softer. "They said I have a problem, an addiction, to videos and that stuff. It's like a trap, you know. I didn't even realize when I got pulled into it." He paused, swallowing hard. His eyes were a little red. "I'm getting treatment now, seeing a therapist every week, going to support groups. I'm trying." I stood still, listening. Nothing rose up inside me, no anger, no satisfaction, no pity. Just this strange calm, like I was listening to a stranger tell me about their life. "I don't expect you to forgive me," James went on, his voice catching. "But I want you to know that what you said, what you did, it woke me up. When you left, I finally realized what I'd lost, the most precious thing." I watched a tear roll down his cheek. James was crying. The second time I'd seen him cry. This time it didn't make me feel anything. It was just tears. "I hope you find happiness, James," I said. He looked up at me, eyes wide, like he couldn't believe his ears. "Really? You? You don't hate me?" I shook my head. "I don't hate you. I was in a lot of pain, a lot of anger, but not anymore. You're part of my past now. And I learned a lot from that past. Hey." James looked at me, still crying, but in his eyes I saw a tiny spark, like relief. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for letting me say this." I nodded and kept pushing my cart. I got my milk, my bread, some apples. James was still standing at the end of the aisle, watching me. I didn't look back. When I walked out of the store, the sky was getting dark. Streetlights were starting to glow, their yellow light spreading softly along the sidewalk. And I saw Liam. He was leaning against his old motorcycle, holding 2 cups of coffee. He wore his usual denim jacket, his hair a little messy from the wind. When he saw me, he smiled and held up one of the cups. I walked over. He looked at me, then toward the store where James had just disappeared. "I saw you talking to someone," Liam said gently. "You okay?" I took the coffee from his hand, breathing in the warm smell. I looked at him and saw a little worry in his eyes, a little curiosity, but no possessiveness, no jealousy. He was just worried about me. "It was James," I said. "I ran into James in the store." Liam was quiet, waiting for me to continue. I looked out at the traffic flowing down the street. Car lights streamed by, red, white, yellow, painting long streaks of colour in the night. "He apologised," I said. "Said he's getting treatment, trying to change." "How do you feel about that?" Liam asked. I turned to look at him. I smiled. "I feel relieved." Liam didn't say anything, just looked at me with those gentle eyes. "Not because he apologised," I explained, "but because I realised I don't hurt anymore. I can look at him and feel nothing except that he's a stranger. And that shows me I've really moved on." I paused, looking for the right words. It's like there was this wound, and now it's healed so completely I can't even remember how much it hurt. Just a faint scar left, reminding me I was hurt once, but not anymore. Liam put his hand on my shoulder and pulled me close. I rested my head against his shoulder, feeling his warmth through his jacket. "I'm proud of you," Liam said softly. "Not because you forgave him, but because you forgave yourself." I looked up at him, surprised. "How did you know?" He smiled and kissed my forehead. "Because I know you, and I know the hardest person to forgive is always yourself." I closed my eyes, letting his words sink in. He was right. All this time I'd been beating myself up for putting up with it for so long, blaming myself for not seeing it sooner, for not having the courage to leave earlier, blaming myself for letting someone else define my worth. But now, standing here in Liam's arms, I realised I did the right thing at the time I could. I couldn't blame myself for loving, for hoping, for trying. That's what people do. That's what makes me who I am. I opened my eyes and looked up at the night sky. A few stars twinkled far above, distant but still shining. "Hey," I said. "Yeah? Let's go home, I'm hungry." Liam laughed, put my helmet on my head, then his. I got on the bike behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. We rode down the long road, the wind cool on my face. I pressed my cheek against Liam's back, closed my eyes, feeling every vibration of the bike, every breath he took, every beat of my own heart. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Liam and I would be together forever. I didn't know what other challenges life would throw at me. But I knew one thing. I had forgiven. Forgiven James, because he was just a person with his own weaknesses. Forgiven my mom, because she only wanted what was best for me, in the only way she knew how. Forgiven all the people who judged me, because they weren't living my life. And most importantly, forgiven myself. For the girl who spent 2 years in the dark, wondering if she was good enough. For the girl who cried on the bathroom floor on her birthday. For the girl who was brave enough to walk away from an unhappy marriage, even when the whole world told her she was wrong. I forgive that girl, and I love her. I love her because she fought. I love her because she didn't give up. I love her because she chose herself. The bike kept moving. The wind kept blowing. The city sparkled with lights. I smiled and held Liam a little tighter. And I thought life, after everything, is still pretty beautiful. Chapter 10, Defining Happiness for Myself. 1 year later, I stood in the middle of the gallery, my palms a little sweaty. All around me were paintings, my paintings, Emma's paintings, the same person who just a year ago only dared to draw cracks in a little notebook. It was a small gallery on the second floor of an old building in the arts district. White walls, soft lighting, creaky wood floors that felt warm and cozy. About 30 people were scattered around the room, looking at the paintings, whispering comments. I wore a simple black dress, my hair up in a bun, light pink lipstick. In my hand was a glass of white wine, my fingers trembling just a little. Liam stood in the corner, talking to some friends. Every now and then he'd look over at me, smile, raise an eyebrow like he was asking, "You okay?" I'd nod slightly and smile back. My eyes stopped at the largest painting in the room. It was hung in the most important spot, right on the wall facing the entrance. The painting showed a woman. She stood on a high cliff, facing the vast ocean, her hair blue in the wind, long black strands flying like silk ribbons. She wore a simple white dress, her arms at her sides, her face turned toward the horizon where the sun was setting, painting the sky red. You couldn't see her face, just her stance, her hair flying, her dress blowing, the sense of freedom coming off every line. The title was written neatly on a small plaque beside it, Freedom. That was the painting I'd worked on for 6 months, after many late nights, after many times starting over, after many tears and many smiles. It was a painting of me, of the woman I'd become. A young woman came to stand next to me, maybe 22 or 23, wearing an oversized sweater, big, round, bright eyes. She looked at Freedom for a long time, then turned to me. "Are you the artist?" she asked softly. "Yeah, I painted these." Her eyes lit up. She looked back at the painting, then at me. "I really love this one, Freedom," she said, pointing. It makes me want to cry, but not sad crying. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, like something inside me is calling out. I looked at her, at the genuine emotion on her young face. "Can I ask," she said, "what does it mean to you?" I took a sip of wine, feeling the slight bitterness on my tongue. I looked for Liam in the crowd. He was laughing with someone, but like he had eyes in the back of his head, he turned and looked at me at just that moment, smiling warmly. I turned back to the young woman. "I was in an unhappy marriage once," I said softly. "Everyone told me I was lucky to have such a gentle, kind husband. But I was dying inside every day. I tried, I waited, I blamed myself. And then one day I realized happiness isn't something other people get to define for you." The girl listened, her eyes fixed on me. "This painting," I pointed at Freedom, "is about the moment I walked away from all that. About the woman who was brave enough to stand alone in front of the ocean, to let the wind blow through her hair, to face the vastness without fear." I paused, looking up at the painting, at the woman on the cliff. It means that sometimes happiness isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about having the courage to leave a place that isn't yours, so you can find yourself again. And when you find yourself, real love will find you. The girl looked at me, her eyes shiny. She bit her lip, trying to hide how moved she was. "Thank you," she said, her voice a little choked. I'm in a relationship right now where I don't even know who I am anymore. This painting and what you said, it gives me courage." I put my hand on her shoulder gently. "You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be yourself. Don't let anyone take that away." The girl nodded, quickly wiping her eye, then smiled at me. A smile that was both weak and strong, like a tiny plant just sprouting after rain. She walked away and I stood alone in front of Freedom. Liam came up beside me, putting his arm around my waist. "What were you talking to that girl about? She looked really moved." I leaned my head against his shoulder. "I told her about the painting, about what it means to me." Liam was quiet for a moment, then kissed my hair. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "Seeing you here today at your own show, talking to people about your work. I can't even describe it." I looked up at him. In his eyes, I could see my reflection, small but clear. "You know," I said, "a year ago I never thought I'd be standing here. I was just a girl drawing cracks in a notebook, crying in the bathroom on my birthday." Liam gently stroked my cheek. "And now?" I looked around the gallery, at all the faces studying the paintings, at my work on the walls, at the wine glass in my hand, at him beside me. "Now I know that the cracks are where the light gets in." He smiled and pulled me into a tight hug. The show ended at 10. The last guests left, leaving the room quiet with only the paintings on the walls. Liam helped me clean up a few things, and then we stood alone in the gallery. I walked slowly along the walls, looking at each piece again. The portrait of my mum with her sad eyes. The still life with the climbing rose from my balcony. the cityscape at night from Liam's studio, and, finally, freedom. I stood in front of it for a long time. "Hey," I whispered to the woman in the painting. "Thank you for being brave enough to step off that cliff." The woman in the painting didn't answer. Her hair still flew, her dress still blew, the ocean still whispered in my imagination. But I knew she was smiling. Liam came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I reached up and put my hand over his. "I'm thinking about this journey, from the girl crying in the bathroom to the woman standing here with her own show, with someone who loves her beside her." "Are you happy?" Liam asked softly. I turned around to face him. The gallery lights sparkled in my eyes, or maybe in his, or maybe both. "I'm happy," I said, "but not just because I have you, because I found myself again. You're part of that happiness, but not all of it. I am all of me." Liam looked at me, his eyes deep. He nodded like he completely understood what I meant. "I love you for that," he said, "for being you, for knowing who you are, for not needing me to be complete." I smiled, stood on my toes and gently kissed his lips. We walked out of the gallery when the streets were empty. The city at night sparkled with lights, tall buildings glittering like distant stars. Liam held my hand, and we walked down the small street toward the parking lot. I looked up at the sky and saw a few real stars peeking through the city's haze, small, distant, but still shining. I didn't know where the future with Liam would go. I didn't know if we'd be together forever, or if someday, like other couples, we'd find our own separate paths. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never let anyone, even the person I loved most, take away my right to live as my true self again. I had lost myself for 2 years. I had woken up every morning wondering if I was good enough, if I deserved love. I had twisted myself into different shapes trying to fit into a mold someone else made. But now I knew. I am good enough, exactly as I am, with my scars, my cracks, the pain I've been through, and the joy that's coming. I found myself, and that was the beginning of everything. I squeezed Liam's hand. He turned and looked at me, smiling. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking that happiness is sometimes really simple, just knowing who you are and having the courage to live that way." He nodded, squeezing my hand back. We kept walking through the city night. Above us, the stars still twinkled. Ahead, the long road waited. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But I knew today I am free. And that's all I need.